And then I think this chart, the way I had set it up was, if I put a filter on this, I don't need. Anyways, I'll eventually get to it where I actually have a chart that shows us all the 10x's and when they're going to age out, you know. I thought I actually had that up here, but I guess I took it down because I'm fooling around with different stuff and I'm trying to normalize data. So this is kind of a working area, you know. Um, if we go over here, kind of give you a kind of a view. Let's see if I got a chart. Let's see if a chart that looks similar. Yeah, I don't have one that actually shows it breaking off. Um, so this is a hex supply chart that shows it going up and to the right, but would be similar to what you might do with Hedron, right? Based on what we know today, how much Hedron in the future could be minted on what days, right? And then that would automatically adjust based on minting activity. And so you might be able to look into the future and say this is how much it can be minted, but I think it's going to actually look like dropping off. Yeah, so I
Based
think you would, yeah, you'd be able to see that. Um, so it'd be
it
kind of
wouldn't
an interesting thing to
it
do.
wouldn't it wouldn't be like a mirrored in version of it, obviously. Not until you had data where all of those uh, contracts were ended, and you only have a historical document of it or documentation of it.
Yeah.
So it may lag. It may lag by a couple of years, but still inverted nonetheless. That's fucking cool. Pardon my French.
Now I had to take down the Hadron page for the time being. I have a Hadron page I normally keep up here because my price feeds broke. Dex blocked some stuff. Dex screener, so I've got to go re-engineer how to connect data to get prices. So my prices got all wonky. So I had to drop Maximus and Hadron so it would continue to operate. And so I kind of envision at some point maybe something like this for Hadron, where we can actually watch. I have a list of like things where, stake IDs that never minted their Hadron or partially minted, so you can kind of see, maybe visualize that people haven't been minting. But most people don't mint. It's only about 10 or 20% of the population actually mint their Hadron. I'm throwing that number out there. I think that's what I observed. I don't know if there's anything here I can show you that makes any sense. I have the capability of putting I do have the capability of putting in the auction data. I was thinking about doing the end data. You're always looking at that spreadsheet and putting in the auction historic data in there because it lags 4 hours, so it's not really useful for, making bids. Excel's much better for that, or a DApp that's connected and going to give you more real-time data.
I can understand why you're not doing that route. It's too fucking expensive.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it, but it just wouldn't be useful. I think, to look at the ongoing stuff. Now, this isn't related to Hadron directly, but here's a big question for you. So this is a year of hex activity, and I'm actually pretty excited about this because what it's showing is active addresses. It's a rolling moving average, 30, 60, 90, 180, 1 year. And the 30-day average just went through the freaking roof, man. All the averages are up because they're all affected by activity. So the more activity you have, the more they're up. And so somebody came back to me and said, hey, this is because of Hedron. And so I'm looking and, when did we start the auctions? The 14th? So it doesn't exactly match. Oh, go ahead.
I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Sorry. So when did we, so here's the thing, right? When did we announce, I say we, just because I include myself in everything, but when was Icosa announced? It was August, right? August something, 26.
Yeah, it was about like two months prior to the launch, something like that.
And it launched in August, right?
Yep.
So it's quite possible, right, that our activity picked up in terms of addresses, right, in action. And this means this is just telling us whether or not somebody moved hex in a wallet, right? So how many wallets had activity? But it peaked out about a month after launch ish, right? So it could be directly related to Icosa launch, right? That we had this peak in activity. And then you get down to that November time frame, perhaps this was also a ramp up related to that, right? Because right here is, so people might have been preparing by getting more involved, right? With swapping hex for new hex stakes, HSI, and then getting ready to do some transactions with them. And then it's just kind of going through the roof since. It's likely there's different things
Actually,
happening.
can you repeat exactly what this metric is showing? It's people moving and interacting with Hex?
Yeah, yeah. So we have so this is before you get all the way down to the detail of what's happening, and what addresses and everything is. So at a high level, if you look at a address, a Ethereum address, and you can look at it and say, has it ever interacted with Hex? Yes or no? And if it's yes, then we now have captured when the first time it has interacted, and when the last time it's interacted, as well as
Is
how
this
much
is
Hex.
this
Go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. Does this also reflect addresses holding HSIs, the hex captured in HSIs, or just liquid hex?
That's a good question. Don't know yet. I'm still digging into whether or not that's accurate. And I'll show you why, if you want, in a moment. Because I was thinking that it should include it, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the blockchain actually understands. Well, there's two pieces to this. I am not sure it actually understands it's interacting with Hex if it receives an NFT. I'm not sure that. So I think so here's a little hunt I went on that I didn't finish. I started seeing mismatches with addresses. I can clearly see addresses that own HSI stakes, but I at first, and there's only about 40 or 50 of them, I didn't see any corresponding hex transactions. And so it led me to the question is, do we have people that we don't know are actually hex holders holding NFTs? And the only reason you would know that they're a hex holder is if you knew that they held the NFT, which gets me all the way back to hex daily stats, where it's possible that we actually have more holders of hex than we're reporting, because the system, from looking at it just from the hex transaction point of view, doesn't know they exist. Does that make sense?
would it suggest that maybe that on a marketplace where somebody's selling an HSI, that somebody that doesn't want to have a wallet address that's correlated, that had already purchased Liquid Hex or made any purchases at all with a fresh wallet, that they just change now or whatever assets from one wallet they use to make it disappear into a brand new fresh wallet, so that way when they go to the marketplace to make the purchase, that it's starting new, and therefore they've never purchased Hex, they've never purchased anything, they just have this HSI, but where their wallets are connected, even though it's been disconnected through the blockchain, in reality it is a hexagon, maybe, or maybe not, and you're never going to be able to find that out if they use Change Now or Changely or something like that to disconnect themselves from themselves.
Yeah,
So
it's certainly possible. Yeah,
that's gonna be a tough one, but it's only 50, like you said, some shit like this out of the 17,000.
yeah, but it was enough for me to start looking at it to go, wait a minute, I wonder. So I have no conclusions, by the way. All I'm saying is that the question about what this tracks is this: is it looks to see whether or not your wallet has had an interaction with a hex contract. And that means, that really just means what has it received or sent any hex ever. And it's inconclusive as to whether or not, if you've never done anything with hex, but you bought a, somehow you received a NFT, whether or not it would actually show an interaction. So I don't have an answer for that yet. But I need to dig into it a little bit. But that actually is a positive, whole. Meaning, if that's true, then we probably have even more going on than what I'm seeing here, right? It wouldn't be less, it would be more activity taking place.
And maybe even potentially like an adoption factor where people who aren't hexagons are buying these HSIs, maybe not even realizing what they have. Maybe potentially some of them. Cool.
Hey, let me pause it because you guys had a couple people piped in, had questions. Did I explain this well enough that people understand what I'm showing on the screen? I apologize, my communication skills might not be good on this one. But...
Yeah, it was clear enough.
I understood it perfectly.
All right, guys, thanks. And so I just, what I did is,
bullish,
yeah, man. I was like, I don't know if I want to publish this stuff, because I got to make sure it's right first, because get people all upset at me one way or another. I'm not so worried about that. Truth is truth, but I do think about the ramifications of putting it out. But I'm like, man, look at this. Look at, I mean, this is 1 year, right? This is just looking at 1 year, and yeah, you can see this is the bear market, man. So what the hell? We could have this kind of activity. Sure, you have downs, ups and downs, but the 365 is very bullish, going up. The 180 is pretty similar. Yes, we got some ups and downs. But yeah, I mean, you pick different time frames, I guess, and look at them. But I took it as being very bullish. And then I guess probably the more frightening side, if you want to go FUD. So if we take a FUD view, when we take this off, if somebody wants to FUD about this, they go like, "Oh, look, everything's down. You guys haven't had any real activity since back in April of 2020." But this tells a whole different tale. You can see after 21, we just, after the years of 21, when we had that blow off top, which was really just everybody celebrating. We've just been going up to the right ever since, and of course this represents God will coming in, and that huge influx of people that all got involved because we were down at the low, and then all of a sudden the price went up and never really came back, you know. The other thing is, if people look at the numbers, it might be like, oh, it's not very many people. You got to remember, when we first started with Hex, dude, I felt like I was the only person involved. You know, it was so few people, right? And so as we got into it, you know, you look back, you go, that's kind of pitiful. You only having 100, transactions on average per day or whatever, you know. So maybe somebody would FUD the hell out of this, but it was new. And plus, this is different. This whole ecosystem isn't about volume. So you really can't use volume measures, like staking isn't like a volume game. It just isn't. I mean, how many transactions could I possibly do? You know?
So this is just unique wallet addresses that have interacted with Hexcoin, right? And if that's the case, this seems, I mean, it looks like it's a dramatic increase in volume at the very end there, or about to start turning upwards parabolically. I don't know what to speculate what may have triggered that. Hedron maybe, but
Well,
more
yeah,
likely maybe
I
this
think it's a part
SBF
of it.
thing, and now that Richard's starting to get some sort of respect on CT, I mean, maybe that.
hmm hmm Yeah, I think it's a bunch of factors. It's not just one. But I do think Hedron and Icosa have a part in it for sure. And for anybody who's not really familiar with Hex, in the history, I also should mention one of the reasons we have this huge peak out here has to do with the huge airdrop that was done of Hex. It was like the first ZK Snark or something airdrop. So we had some huge amount of, we had this huge amount of wallets that were all airdropped 100 hex. So the count went way up for a very short period of time. This is a little bit different view because it goes back 2 years, but again, very bullish, man. I mean, it appears that we're building momentum, you know. And to that extent, if we go back over here and look real quick, I can show the guys who might have this question. So we go to the holder data, and you just wanted to come in here and look, and I'm just going to say, hey, show me everybody has just 100 hex. It's kind of a weird number, right? Like who would have only 100 hex in your wallet and why? Come on. All right, so we've got many wallets, 151,000 wallets with just exactly 100 hex in it. And so again, this is another possible FUD direction, right? Now, this guy has 100 in there because he got it after he did some other transactions, but this is definitely a FUD discussion that people can start FUDding out. Like, why do all these people have 100? Where did they come from? Why are so many of the dates the same? Blah blah blah. So you can get that argument from people. So that's quite a bit. In fact, you'll hear if you ever do listen to any of the videos and stuff where people are FUDding, they'll talk about this. They'll talk about how there's so many wallets that just have 100, and they use that as evidence of whatever they're trying to prove. But the reality is the reason this happened was somebody wanted to try something, and they did like this huge airdrop using a layer 2. So I mean, it just happened. It's not like something that was super terrible. And you can see there's a bunch of wallets that actually received the 100 after they did their transactions and did whatever they were doing. I've got to provide some sort of linkage in here, but you can actually go look at these, and I went and copied that address. You can come in here and see, what's the history been for this guy. see if he ever did any stakes or anything. So it seems like not. So this guy's never done any stakes. And it makes sense because, you know, when I look at an address and I go over to, I didn't want to do that. Let's do .io. If I go over and look at an address, good practice is not to keep things in the same wallet for a long time. So particularly if you're one of these liquid guys. So this guy hasn't on this transaction done anything on this wallet for a very long time. And the last thing he did was send 1.4 million out to this address. And this kind of, let's see if this looks more like a person or not. That guy also got 100, but I don't, he got his hex in maybe a little bit further out than this. See anything out? Let's see what he did with them. I'm just scanning kind of quickly through here to see if I can find this. But anyways, if you wanted to go do the, you know, do the forensics on this, it looks like a lot of transactions going through this wallet. I don't know if it's a contract wallet or something else, but it might have been something that the guy was doing. But so you'd be able to go do more forensics on it to go figure out what's happening with it. And then if we go look at auctions right now, I think we've got 26 of them up and running. I don't know if we lost you, execution, if you're here, but this is kind of what I was getting at with, assuming my numbers are right. You know, there's some people that are willing to get a little bit of a discount on hex, 12% on hex, and they don't care about the Icosa or whether they can turn it in.
Yeah, I'm still following. I'll be following until you're like, I'm not going to screen share anymore, and then I got to go.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, hey, well, since this was kind of impromptu, I see we got a lot of people in here. Is there something anybody has a question about I could pull up? All right, Mr. Executioner, you're free.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you for the report, man. That was sick. I love that shit.
Yeah, I could do this all day, man. I mean, just dig into all these details.
I got a quick question if you have a second.
Yeah, sure.
That total potential Hedron mint figures that you were showing earlier. Is there another chart that actually shows what percentage of those have activity within the last week, month, quarter, year, that kind of thing, to see how many of, you know, each level of bonus is actually actively minting when they have the opportunity to do so?
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet with my data. But yeah, I think you can get it. I think you can get it. The data that I have available so far simply will tell me how much they've minted. So I can draw a high level conclusion based on that. You know, if somebody's minted in the past, then it's likely they'll mint in the future. And then I also know if they ended their stakes without minting, which a lot of people do. And so that gives you kind of another piece. Of course, once it's ended, you just take it off the board, so you're not worried about it at all. To get it, what you're asking, which is what's the likelihood that somebody will mint? I think past history minting is probably the strongest one, and that's what you're asking about. So, yeah, at some point, maybe we can get to the point we have the data to know, just like with the hex interactions that we have, Hedron interactions and whatnot. I mean, it's certainly available on the blockchain. I mean, it's there. But what it drives you towards is needing to be able to grab even more information all the time, right? To be able to answer all these questions. But on a point basis, individual basis, you can go look and see it pretty obviously, right?
One follow-up. What percentage of that 10 times bonus, which I'm assuming is what the OA claimed, what percentage of that is the OA wallets or whatever daughters? Do you have any idea of that or no?
No, I haven't gotten that far yet. I thought about that, and I don't have all the details. So I believe the essay also can mint. Is that correct? Does
Yeah.
anybody know? Yeah.
The essay also participated for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I go, I'm gonna go look at that real quick while we're talking. But yeah, I mean that would be the thing to do, right? Is to rule out, um, you know, of the 100x bonuses, which addresses are likely not going to mint, or at least to be aware of how much is in those addresses. Now I do have the what we think are the OA addresses, related OA addresses, and we should be able to get the SA address as well, and maybe they get categorized, separately.
Cool information though. Thanks for the info. I appreciate it. All the time you're putting into it.
Oh, you're welcome, bud. No problem.
Well, thanks again for the info, Crispy. I obviously right away you handled the information that I wanted with the averages for the HSIs that are being sold, with how much Hedron is actually being utilized for those T shares. it's really not that surprising that what we talked about last week and the week before, that your perception has pretty well been correct on the increase of those averages as they go along. I know that we had no way of understanding whether that was a correct thought process or not, but man, it is vindicating to see it as it happens. That's for sure. To know that, you know, in some way that you were right about those things as you saw them. So it's cool. And I'm gonna go ahead and after this. Thanks again, Crispy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, buddy.
Yes. Big ups.